The belief in the prevailing narrative among a lot of people is so strong that it's obvious now simple factual information that contradicts the latest news won't work. This was a real revelation for me, and I persisted for a while, but the reality is facts don't change minds. We've all seen it. Facts don't matter, and they won't stand in a gale of propaganda from the mainstream media. So I decided to find a way to change people's minds, and this may be the most important thing we do in 2021. The current circumstances will go on and on unless we change them. Politicians won't give up their power voluntarily, ruling by fear, having journalists hanging on their every word. It's like a drug to them. TV media is getting decent viewing figures, whereas before they were falling precipitously, so they don't want it ending anytime soon. Newspapers have seen advertising revenue collapse from their usual sources. Why would you advertise summer holidays if there won't be any? However, government has stepped into the breach, and they are now one of the biggest advertisers in national newspapers. So, what are the odds of newspapers biting the hand that feeds them? It's widely rumoured there are a lot of medical staff and scientific staff, and they're very concerned about the way this is going. But they're cowed. They see how some of the skeptics are treated, and they are afraid. As for the courts, well, it's encouraging that many fines have been set aside, but fighting the state in state courts when the state can change the rules at any point may not be the best strategy. And it goes without saying that violent rebellion is both stupid and unethical. So we have to change minds. That's not easy against a 24/7 hysterical and well thought out psyop, but we have to do it. And here's how. I started looking at how people are deprogrammed when they come out of cults. CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, is highly effective, but this is pretty intensive and time consuming, and you'd need to get someone to commit to therapy. And if they don't think they have a problem, they won't commit. Then I came across something called street epistemology. This was a term coined by Peter Boghossian, who is an assistant professor of philosophy at Portland State University. Street epistemology is the name for a set of conversational techniques which enable the examination of strongly held beliefs, especially of, say, the religious kind, in a non-confrontational manner. So if it can work for the strongest beliefs of all, surely it can work to debunk the prevailing narrative, and, let's be honest, that's becoming cult-like and quasi-religious. A few points. Be gentle with the questions. It's not a cross-examination. Information which contradicts what someone believes can have what's called the backfire effect. It can actually entrench beliefs. People will cling to them more strongly. You need to build rapport and not dominate someone. Don't make them feel like an idiot. Speak softly. This is a two-stage process, which first involves getting them to question their existing beliefs. Only when they do this, only when they doubt them, are they amenable to listen to better arguments. You can help people with the following techniques, but they have to make the journey themselves, which is why rapport and empathy are very important. So first, find out exactly what they believe. This is not a time for attacking or ridiculing, even if you feel like screaming, "How can you possibly believe that?" Just determine precisely and exactly what someone believes. Be calm and neutral. If they know you're skeptical, you might want to go with the phrase, if you're right, I might want to believe it too, or something along those lines. You have to do this face to face rather than via text. It's far better. Otherwise, they'll just end up Googling endless propaganda and sending you links. Next, you need to find out, why do they believe it? That is to say, how do they determine which claims should be believed and which claims shouldn't? What is the process? This is a powerful question because, of course, for many, many people, there is no process. Third and last, how do they come to the conclusion that some sources are trustworthy and can be trusted, and how can this be tested? Again, this is a great question because it implicitly gets someone to doubt the propaganda source they previously accepted. And then you can ask them, what would it take for you not to believe this? Again, this introduces the possibility of doubt. So I'll give you an example that you might want to use as some kind of template. Now, it's clearly not possible to cover every possible scenario that might come up, but I'll do a theoretical example so you get the idea. Now let's assume, for the purposes of this purely theoretical example, because I'm keen to avoid another strike from YouTube, we live in a land called, say, Narnia. And to protect us from a new and dangerous kind of witchcraft, the government said we all have to wear some kind of cloth or paper over our faces. We'll call them magic coverings. You see where I'm going with this? So, in a calm, soft and interested voice, ask someone, what exactly do you believe about magic coverings? Most likely they'll say they wear them to protect others because that's what the propaganda's been saying. Ask them if there are any other reasons. I'm almost sure many people still think they're protecting themselves because you can see fear in their eyes. So clarify this one. Say, do you think they protect you as well? Next, ask them why they believe magic coverings protect themselves and others. What was the process that led them to this conclusion? Say, some people believe they work, others don't. What was the process that led you to believe that the magic coverings do work? It's a great question, of course, because it contains the implicit doubt. Be gentle here. People can get defensive, and when that happens, you get the backfire effect. You must avoid that. So say something like, if you're right, then I should probably wear one too. So what was your thought process in coming to this conclusion? This is a devastating question because when some people realise there really wasn't a thought process, they were merely fed a claim which they swallowed, it can be quite hurtful to their pride. So right there you've gone a long way to shattering that former certain belief. So maybe they say, I saw the dear leader and some state magicians on the state broadcaster saying that we should wear magic coverings, and that's an authoritative source. Okay, let's test that assumption that the state broadcaster is indeed an authoritative source, and let's check the record of the state magicians. If they pan out, I should put a magic covering on. So you could say, well, the state broadcaster reported the dear leader of the day saying we had to invade the southern desert areas of Narnia because the local dictator, we'll call him Najman Butane, had WMDs, and the wider media told us that Narnians were 45 minutes from doom. Was any of that true? Of course it wasn't. What about the state magicians? Perhaps Chief Magician Ferguson ignored his own advice for some horizontal jogging type fun. So we may wonder how seriously he takes it. But he has made wild and over-the-top magical predictions previously. I'll leave a link in the description because YouTube gets jumpy when I cite actual facts and the metaphors might get a bit stretched here. I've had a strike already, so please see the link in the description for the record. Now ask, what evidence would persuade you that perhaps another viewpoint was more accurate? Now this might be enough to dislodge the former belief in the magicians and their recommendations about magic coverings. At this point you can introduce information which is contrary to the narrative, but not until the previous beliefs are gone. So to summarise, calmly and quietly ask people what they believe, face to face. Don't cross-examine, attack or ridicule, you'll just force them into an entrenched position. But do find out exactly and precisely what they believe. Next, ask what process they used to determine if the claim was true. At this point they'll realise there was no process, they just accepted it, and if they have any integrity this would be troubling, so be gentle. Finally, ask how they know the sources of information can be trusted, and what would it take for you to begin to doubt the conclusion. You can usually have an example showing how they are absolutely not to be trusted. This video will be too long if I cover all the scenarios you might encounter, but I'll put a few on Google Docs if you'd like to download some scripts. I'll put a link in the description. You might need to practice a few times and be mentally agile enough because it's more or less impossible to counter everything that could come up, but this is the way we change minds. This is the only thing left to us. We need to change minds, and when enough people say no, this ends. And we don't need everybody. We don't even need a majority. If we can persuade 10% of people to say no, this will be over. These are the tools we can use to make the change. Alexander Solzhenitsyn said, when he was languishing in a gulag and lamenting the fact that Russians didn't resist when they still could, he said, if we didn't love freedom enough, and even more, we had no awareness of the real situation. We spent ourselves in one unrestrained outburst in 1917, and then we hurried to submit. We submitted with pleasure. We purely and simply deserved everything that happened afterwards. We're at a crossroads today. We can still get our freedom back, but we won't get it. We will never get it by complying, by wearing masks, by doing as we're told, and by having our chains rest lightly upon us. This only ends when we end it. So, with peace in our hearts and truth in our voices, let's change minds together. This is the fight of our generation. It's our war, and we have to fight. We will be betraying our children if we fail. So together, let's win our freedom. If you like this, please like, recommend, and subscribe.